Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. As we get started today here in these first few minutes, we encourage you to use the chat function to share a little introduction about yourself and where you're joining us from. Thank you for joining us from all over the world today for this kickoff of Daring Cities 2024 with this webinar, Building on COP28 United Arab Emirates Consensus, What's Next for Urban Leaders Driving Climate Emergency Action Forward. My name is Alyssa Chanot. I'm Operations Manager here at the ICLEI World Secretariat in Bonn, Germany, and very privileged to be here to host this kickoff webinar with you all. Today, we'll be joined with valuable insights and perspective from several folks today, including some local leaders. We're joined today by Abigail Binay, Mayor of City of Makati from the Philippines, who served on the COP28 Advisory Committee and also serves as ICLEI Global Executive Committee member. We're also joined by Lauren McLean, Mayor of the City of Boise, Idaho in the US. And then we're also joined from experts in the global advocacy space, Danu Petrick from the city, who's a cities engagement manager for the Climate Champion Cities, and Eunice Ericon, who's the director of global advocacy here at the ICLEI World Secretariat and the UNFCCC LGMA focal point. And then finally, we will hear from Joanna Bookman-Duck, who's an officer for the global events team also here at the World Secretariat, on how Daring Cities 2024 can be leveraged as an important mechanism to raise the voices of local and regional governments during this critical year, culminating in COP29 in Azerbaijan. Just a note, we will have time for questions and answers at the end of the webinar, so please use the question and answer box to submit your questions anytime during the webinar. We'd like to just get everyone up to speed on where we've gotten to today, coming off of Daring Cities 2023. So as some of you may know, Daring Cities has taken place annually since 2020, building off a decade of success from the Resilient Cities Congress, which gears to acknowledge, promote, and empower urban decision makers to raise their climate ambitions in response to the climate emergency. We take a three-pronged approach to do this that focuses on knowing more, where Daring Cities presents and shares the most cutting-edge research and information on the climate crisis and its impact on cities around the world, aimed at creating dialogues between researchers, practitioners, decision makers. Focuses on acting better. We know that knowledge alone won't solve the climate emergency, and that urban leaders often need valuable insights from other successful cities to motivate action. Daring Cities provides that platform to showcase these examples and enables other governments to learn and adapt them locally. And then finally, leading together, where we share concrete actions to advocate for better collaboration and more ambition. Daring Cities is all about championing the voices of bold leaders to tackle the climate emergency. We do this through three cornerstones: reflecting, exchange, and advocate. So coming off of 2023, the key outcomes that were part of the exchange cornerstone was first, that justice and equity should be at the core of the response to the climate emergency. We acknowledge historical injustices and the ability of all individuals to thrive sustainably. Effective climate action demands the empowerment and inclusion of typically vulnerable groups. Addressing age, gender, ethnic disparities requires not just technical measures, but also robust community engagement from the outset, as well as clear communication strategies that meet people where they are, contextualizes the narrative in a way that's accessible, and that truly fosters an inclusive and equitable transition to a greener future. The second message that came out of our first cornerstone last year was that cities are already providing innovative climate solutions on the ground. The climate emergency is asking for innovative solutions to create a path towards a just and equitable transition. Many cities are already responding through nature-based approaches, community-driven data collection, improved access to climate finance, digitalization for transparent financial systems, sustainable housing initiatives that emphasize affordable decarbonization. And finally, that multi-level action is the new normal in the global climate agenda. Today's climate agenda underscores local engagement and urgent collaboration for a just and equitable climate action response. While the UNFCCC has prioritized and strengthened this collaboration of non-party stakeholders through things like the Marrakesh Partnership and the Sharm el-Sheikh Adaptation Agenda, other global processes and initiatives like the UN Global Stocktake need further integration and involvement of local perspectives. We know that multi-level governance is crucial, particularly through South-by-South connections that can spur innovative pathways to achieving the 1.5 degree scenario. So these three key messages were then shared throughout the year, including through Urban October, that then culminated in COP28, that was elevated through our multi-level action and urbanization pavilion and many interventions during the 2 weeks of COP. You can find out a little bit more about the Daring Cities 2023 outcomes and how they built up to COP28 in our Daring Cities 2023 report. We'll add a link here to the chat, but it's also available on our website. So as a result, we've really entered this new era for ambitious and multi-level action. We're building off insights from the global stocktake, the monumental local representation on COP through the Local Climate Action Summit, which had over 500 mayors from 60 countries aimed at turbocharging multi-level action, and the launch of CHAMP, known as the Coalition for High Ambition Multi-Level Partnerships for Climate Action. And this is an initiative that national governments committed to a new process for local and regional leaders to contribute to the development of updated and ambitious nationally determined contributions. To date, 72 countries have made this commitment. In our assessment, COP28 was more ambitious, more inclusive, and furthered multi-level action than any other COP to date. And Daring Cities provides this excellent opportunity for cities and regions to build on this momentum and move toward COP29 in Azerbaijan. Thank you for being here and for taking this journey with us. But before I invite our first speaker here today, we would like to get a better understanding of your involvement in COP28. So we'll launch a poll here that gives you opportunity to share how your cities and regions were involved in the COP28 proceedings. Feel free to select one of these answers or multiple answers. And if you'd like to share a little more insight with us and others who are on the webinar today, feel free to do so also in the chat. We'd love to hear a little bit more about your representation and interventions at COP28. All right, we'll get ready to close the poll here in 5 seconds. Thank you. We'll share the results. So yeah, as we see with the poll results, and we'll take a look at the chat as well, representation and with intervention or just participation, speaking opportunities within events within the COP, the 2 weeks of COP, was the main way that we saw cities and regions participate. And that was on a level that we'd seen and compared to no other COP before. So we're very excited about that level of representation at COP28. All right, then kicking off things with our first speaker, we'd like to share a video message from Mayor Benai, who's sharing important insights from COP28 and the monumental multi-level initiative, CHAMP.
I'm honored to speak before you today and share invaluable insights from COP28, talk about the pivotal role of the Coalition for High Ambition Multi-Level Partnerships, or CHAMP, in galvanizing climate action, and discuss my contributions to the advisory group. Together, we'll explore how these platforms are not just shaping the global climate agenda, but also redefining the influence and impact of local governments in steering our planet towards a sustainable and resilient future. For COP28 in Dubai, UAE, I share these 3 important takeaways. The first is inclusive, multi-level partnerships and gender focus. I'm deeply appreciative of the COP28 team for including local government leaders in the conversation through the CHAMP initiative. It's a vital step for involving subnational governments in strengthening national determined contributions, or NDCs. Looking ahead to COP29, I champion the continuation of this inclusive approach, stressing the importance of integrating diverse perspectives, especially focusing on the distinct impacts of climate change across genders and ages to foster equitable and impactful climate action. Secondly, clarity on climate finance and the Loss and Damage Fund. The operational details of the Loss and Damage Fund, especially regarding its financial sources, distribution methods, and transparency measures, require urgent clarification. Despite the unmet expectations in climate finance at this summit, I see an opportunity for substantial progress at COP29. It's critical to ensure subnational governments are integral to the climate finance discourse, advocating for urban considerations in funding mechanisms, and pushing for sustainable urbanization to be recognized under Article 6.8 of the Paris Agreement, aligning with our commitment to localized climate solutions. And third, fossil fuel transition. COP28 has importantly acknowledged the necessity of moving away from fossil fuels. While the term transition away rather than phase out has drawn some criticism, I recognize the importance of interim fuels like liquefied petroleum gas in securing energy stability for developing regions, even as we must chart a definitive timeline for shifting to sustainable energy sources. I see the Coalition for High Ambition Multilevel Partnerships, or CHAMP, as a transformative platform that emerged from COP28, designed to strengthen the collaboration between national and subnational governments for impactful climate action. This initiative aligns with the Paris Agreement and prior COP frameworks, emphasizing the urgent need for integrated efforts to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. It's about enhancing our joint efforts in climate strategy development, encompassing NDCs, NAPs, NBSAPS, and LTLDS, and ensuring these plans are ambitious, actionable, and monitored effectively. I view CHAMP as a critical facilitator in bridging the gap between different government levels, ensuring that Makati City's climate initiatives are aligned with national and global objectives. This role enables me to integrate local actions into a broader and more impactful framework. The initiative empowers cities, recognizing our essential contributions to the climate agenda. And it offers Makati City a platform to influence national and international strategies, ensuring our innovative solutions and local success stories resonate on a global scale. CHAMP serves as a conduit for accessing vital resources. It opens doors to financial, technical, and knowledge sharing networks vital for implementing our climate mitigation and adaptation strategies effectively. Participating in CHAMP allows me to highlight Makati's climate commitments, inspiring others to escalate their ambitions, and this collective drive supports our shared goal of mitigating global warming and integrating robust climate action into local governance. Emphasizing adaptation and resilience, CHAMP aligns with our focus on preparing Makati for the impacts of climate change, enhancing the sustainability and robustness of our urban environment. It is my role to ensure that specific needs and priorities of local communities are represented and heard in global climate dialogues, influencing policies and agreements to reflect the realities faced by cities worldwide. Finally, as member of the UN Secretary-General's Advisory Group on Local and Regional Governments, I extend a heartfelt message to my fellow local leaders. Our collective role in the face of global challenges is more critical than ever. This advisory group presents us with a unique platform to amplify our local voices and ensure that the urban and regional perspectives are integral to the global development agenda. It's our opportunity to demonstrate the power of local action in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals and to push for the localization of global commitments, particularly in climate action, resilience building, and sustainable urban development. I urge each one of you to seize this moment to transform our communities into models of sustainability and innovation. By leveraging our experiences and the support from the UN Secretary-General's Advisory Group, we can advocate for policies that recognize the significance of local governance, share transformative solutions that have proven successful in our cities, and foster a collaborative network that transcends borders. Together, we can inspire change that resonates globally, setting a precedent for inclusive, effective, and ambitious local leadership. Let us be the champions of this era, shaping a resilient and sustainable future for our cities and for generations to come.
We'd like to thank Mayor Benai for her leadership as part as ICLE within our Global Executive Committee, as well as the integral part that she played in the COP28 Advisory Board, and for sharing these insights with us today. Next, we'd like to invite Mayor McLean from Boise, Idaho, to share her insights, reflections, impressions from COP28, and how she's building off that momentum going forward into COP29. Mayor?
Well, hello, and thanks so much for the opportunity. It's really great to join you and others today to talk about both COP28 and where we're headed in our local communities. It was truly an honor to be invited to represent Boise alongside some of my staff at COP28 with other mayors. And we chose to take the message that Boiseans expect us to be climate leaders to the summit. Look for opportunities, and I want to thank ICLE for creating many of them to share those stories, but then to also explore how, as a city, we can take more meaningful action to keep our residents healthy, ensure that our community is resilient, and create opportunity into the future as we look to decarbonize our community. There are a couple takeaways that I wanted to share, as well as some opportunities that I see moving forward and that we've focused on for our community. And when we think about climate action in Boise, I think about it as an opportunity to lead because our residents are so clear that they want us to lead. Whether it be an 82% vote on a $570 million clean water and climate action bond, support for recycling and composting that crests over 97% of our residents with a 42% diversion rate, or even just the basic requests I get on a weekly basis of how residents can help us do more. The willingness of Boiseans to contribute to what a city can contribute to as we seek to decarbonize both our city government and our community to prepare for the future is key. We are taking various climate actions that I wanted to discuss, and I have to say that through COP and our experience at COP28, I have decided with my team that it's so necessary to look at how we can expand funding opportunities for our city to advance our actions even more. Of course, there's great opportunities with the Inflation Reduction Act and the bipartisan infrastructure law, the infrastructure bill, to fund cities who are taking and are willing to take climate action to secure our futures. Yet there are many times that we need to look beyond that, and I appreciated the partnership with foundations at COP28 that opened the door to discussions about how they can leverage the work that we're doing with federal dollars and extend that into the future. I wanted to highlight some wins for us that we announced this fall and that will take us into the future. And one of those is a power purchase agreement with our power company. Our local power company, Idaho Power, has committed to powering its customers with 100% clean electricity by 2040. Our city municipal goal is to do that by 2030, and then community-wide by 2035. So I like to say that we're going to help them meet their goals as they help us meet ours. But a big part of our ability to beat our goals as a municipal government that will be fueled or powered by 100% clean electricity is a power purchasing agreement, the first of its kind in our state that we announced in partnership with Micron and Meta and the power company, where we have agreed to secure new solar power into the future to power our airport and our water renewal facilities. And we also have a climate action council, a youth climate action council, excuse me, and that's made up of high school students of various ages. They have the opportunity to come back and share it in a second year if they want to participate. That's helping guide They're both learning about what the city is doing and can do, but then helping guide us with ideas for new action to meet our decarbonization goals. They just recently held a climate action summit where each of the high schools represented and broke into groups and committed to their own climate action plans to take on at their high schools to encourage their schools to be a partner in our goals to meet clean electricity and carbon neutral, a clean electricity goal and a carbon neutral goal for our community. And then I did want to highlight some of the grants that we've received from both the Infrastructure Reduction Act and the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, which I deeply appreciate, whether it be $12 million for our regional bus system to advance best-in-class bus transit systems with a plan that's been sitting on the shelves for 20 years, or a recent announcement that we're receiving $3.4 million to install electric vehicle charging stations throughout the community, as well as build out an apprenticeship program and job training opportunities for jobs of the future as we electrify our city, and a $1 million Water Smart grant for water planning that's tied to that Clean Water Climate Action Bond that was passed by the residents. And a recent announcement because of that, that we've purchased land or are beginning to build a water recycling plant that will provide recycled water to green industries in our city to grow jobs in a sustainable way, help our business partner meet their own climate goals as our city meets ours, and we create opportunity for our residents. Look forward to more work ahead, to learning more from ICLEI, to the advancements that'll come out of COP29, but most importantly, to the work that I'm doing with our residents hand in hand together to make our clean electricity and carbon neutral goals a reality, to ensure that we keep our residents healthy, that we keep it affordable as possible to cool our homes and heat them in the winter. And then, of course, that we have jobs into the future and a resilient city and valley here in the capital city of Boise, Idaho.
Thanks, Mayor McLean.
Thank
really for your valuable contributions that you just outlined for COP28, but also we know that you had a few speaking opportunities within the Multi-Level Action and Urbanization Pavilion, and those are very valuable insights and interventions. It's always great to hear from our local leaders within our pavilion, so thanks for that as well.
Thank you.
All right, please remember to use the question and answer box to submit questions just as they come to you through the webinar. We'll continue now on and taking things at the more global advocacy outlook scale. And I'd like to invite Dunya from our Climate Champion team to share her perspectives on those notable achievements, accomplishments that are coming out of COP28.
Thank you so much, and thanks for having me here today. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with the work of the Climate Champions, there's some history and context to their work. At the COP21 in Paris, governments agreed that mobilizing stronger and more ambitious climate action was urgently required to achieve the goals of the Paris Agreement. And nations decided to appoint two high-level champions, one from the current COP presidency and one from the incoming COP presidency, to connect the work of parties with the collaborative actions taken by non-party stakeholders, meaning cities, regions, businesses, philanthropies, and civil society, as well as academia. The current UN Climate Change High-Level Champions, or HLCs as we call them for short, for COP28 and COP29 are Her Excellency Ms. Razan Al Mubarak and Ms. Nigar Arpadarai, who has recently just joined representing Azerbaijan. And they build on the legacy of their predecessors to engage with subnational governments and activate what is called the ambition loop with national governments. So I'm seconded from ICLEI Africa to the Climate Champions team as the City, States and Regions Engagement Manager. Essentially, I'm responsible for subnational governments as a stakeholder group and support ICLEI as the co-lead on human settlement system within the Sharm el-Sheikh adaptation agenda, and a little bit more on that later. But what I want to share with you all today is a bit about COP28 and the outcomes achieved through the engagement of the HLCs, mainly related to nature inclusivity and multi-level governance. So the HLC approach at COP28 focused very strongly on regionalization and multi-level action, particularly in the specific sectors of energy, industry, transport, cities, buildings, resilience, adaptation, and regional delivery, recognizing the global nature of climate change and the need for fostering varied strategies across different sectors that sometimes are very interlinked. There were some very important achievements in the UAE Consensus, such as agreement among all parties to end deforestation by 2030, and alignment specifically with the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, or GBF, and enhanced cooperation on the Rio Conventions, which was a clear recognition that climate change can't be addressed without protecting nature and biodiversity first, as well as an urgent call to align the existing international climate and nature policies and conventions, which was a really important and critical outcome. As well as that, the UAE and People's Republic of China also spearheaded a joint statement on climate, nature, and people, which was endorsed by 18 countries and 11 partnerships to develop national climate nature plans. Additionally, the UAE-Brazil Nature Partnership was announced, which was an opportunity to carry forward the many nature and indigenous peoples related outcomes and initiatives, and set the stage for ongoing collaboration extending from COP28 in Dubai to COP30 in Belém in 2025. The conference also succeeded in raising $1.9 billion for 19 climate projects, demonstrating the effectiveness of HLC-led regional platforms for climate projects. And then on a more practical action-based level related to the nature agenda, the COP28 mobilized more than $2.7 billion for nature-based solutions across forests, oceans, and coastal ecosystems through related initiatives and calls to action. More than 200 global businesses and financial institutions committed to nature-focused targets, disclosures, and investments, and more than 150 businesses and financial institutions joined the Nature Positive for Climate Action call to action that contributes towards the delivery of the Sharm el-Sheikh Adaptation Agenda and the 2030 breakthroughs, committing to nature-focused targets, disclosures, and investments across different sectors. In addition, the Urban Nature Program was launched by a number of partners, including ICLEI, at the Local Climate Action Summit. This initiative showcases what is called lighthouse cities that exemplify global leadership and build a pipeline of ambitious green urban infrastructure and nature-based solutions that address the impacts of climate change in an urban setting. The HLCs also ensured that climate discussions were inclusive, particularly by involving Indigenous peoples and women to shape fair and effective policies. And one of the major political achievements at COP28 was the enhanced recognition of gender perspectives in climate action. And this was highlighted in particular by the COP28 Gender Responsive Just Transitions and Climate Action Partnership, a groundbreaking initiative that received endorsement from 78 national governments. In addition, over 79 nations signed the COP28 and Bloomberg-led Coalition for High Ambition Multi-Level Partnership, or CHAMP, for climate action, which we've heard a little bit about already from Mayor Benet. Strong support for multi-level cooperation at the ministerial meeting on urbanization and climate change, and an unprecedented inclusion by the COP28 presidency in the COP agenda, including the first ever Local Climate Action Summit, which had over 300 subnational leaders in attendance, and all of which herald a new phase of collaboration between all levels of governments. So when we speak about multi-level governance, we speak specifically around both vertical integration between tiers of government, but also horizontal engagement across different departments, ministries, private sector, civil society, and academia. So 2 major progress reports were also launched under the leadership of the HLCs at COP28. The first was the Sharm el-Sheikh Adaptation Agenda Implementation Report, where ICLEI co-leads the Task Force on Human Settlements alongside UN Habitat, and the Race to Resilience Progress Report. Just a little bit about those reports. The Sharm el-Sheikh Adaptation Agenda constitutes the global adaptation solutions agenda for non-party stakeholders, driving public-private collaboration and partnerships to respond to existing implementation, finance, and planning gaps. It basically has 6 different systems, all of which encompass a set of clear and tangible near-term solutions or outcomes that enable adaptation and resilience transformation across all systems towards the target of making 4 billion vulnerable people more resilient by 2030, which is the overarching Race to Resilience target. And related to the Race to Resilience Progress Report, ICLEI has led on the city's Race to Resilience since its launch in 2021. And the progress report launched at COP28 includes a chapter on subnational governments and leadership, specifically on cities and regions, with some case studies. And all analysis and statistics were provided by the CDP ICLEI track for those cities Race to Resilience members who reported into the CDP ICLEI track in 2023, which is approximately 80% of our signatory cities. So with that, and those COP28 achievements under the HLC leadership, I'll hand over to Eunice to speak more into the broader global advocacy space that our subnational governments operate in, with a bit more information on CHAMP and other initiatives. Please feel free to follow up with me on any of the initiatives or reports that I've mentioned. Thanks so much again.
Alyssa, shall I continue immediately? Okay, thank you. It's a great pleasure to join this distinguished panel of colleagues and leaders, particularly really motivated to listen to Mayor Binay and Mayor McLean, and my colleague Dania has excellently summarized the action agenda. In my capacity as the focal point of the local governments and municipal authorities constituency, I'd like to contribute in this debate by some bird's eye view of what exactly we have achieved overall in its entirety of this COP, where this fits on what the journey we have been joining in the last 40 years, because we are saying that a new era started with Dubai, and it's always good to remember where did we reach here and how did we come to this process, but of course spend some time on what to expect so that the discussions of the Daring Cities community here would contribute in the next couple of weeks and months. So what we listened from Mayor Binay, Mayor McLean, and Dania, we summarize it as in 3 main outcomes. First of all, this COP, this Conference of Partners, was the most ambitious in terms of its solutions or agreements for climate commitments. What do we mean by that? Which is what you heard, there is a commitment for the first time ever transition from fossil fuels, tripling of renewable energy. The first time ever there is a commitment to support loss and damage, the communities who are who lost and damaged through the climate disasters, as well as commitments to advance roadmap transport in a sustainable manner. So these are traditional climate agendas. Therefore, for those years we have been fighting for these commitments, that is on the table. That's ambitious. But the second more very important point of why COP28 in Dubai was so impressive is that it was inclusive. Inclusive in the sense, as you heard, that we were in the Leaders Summit. There were 180 leaders or 150 leaders across the world. Through the local climate action summit or other events, they were connecting together. They were joining the roundtables together. We had mayors like Mayor Barranco, who was sitting together next to the Prime Minister of Slovakia, and they were both talking to the Minister of Environment of Japan and/or China, so that this openness, this inclusive practice was really very appreciated. We also have seen for the first time the presidency, the Emirates, has supported the contributions by supporting delegations or opening their pavilions in more community atmosphere. But not just processes or institutions, but This COP was also inclusive in terms of opening the doors of climate action to beyond traditional climate topics. Traditionally, we are always talking about mitigation, which is the emissions that is the result of our activities, or adaptation. What are the consequences of these increased emissions? For the first time in COP, we have talked about the root cause of the climate action, which is, or climate emergence, which is how we deal with nature, how would we address our food systems, how would we integrate cultural values, consumption and production patterns, how we discuss health in the climate debate. These are the topics which are not anymore a side event or just a discussion sideline, but it is in the negotiated documents that there is a commitment to command climate action to these root causes of climate emergency. Therefore, it is the most inclusive. And finally, this is the most multi-level action. In that sense, this COP, we have heard that we have received a decision which urges parties for multi-level action. It is in numerous 15 paragraphs, around 15 paragraphs, and the most important one, paragraph 161 of the climate commitment. It is now a duty of the national governments to work for multi-level action. The second thing we have is a global commitment from US to Dominican Republic, from Japan to Rwanda. We have 70 plus nations that will be bringing their new climate plans 2 years later to Belém with multi-level collaboration. We have made a connection to this commitment to the ministerial meetings that urban ministers are also part of this debate, which was kicked off last year, just a year before. And finally, these commitments, the decisions were not coming on its own. We, as LGMA constituents, network of cities and subnations, throughout these 2 weeks, we have connected these initiatives and commitments to the negotiations, from the boardrooms to the negotiating rooms. We have provided inputs to the texts, and through our pavilion, every day we met there, we convened our constituency partners, we celebrated our achievements, but also announced new initiatives, so that 2 full weeks, we had our own base camp of subnational networks that were following the process and that were creating on how this process could be made better. These are all giving us the confidence that this is now embedded in the heart of climate action. And let's remember, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, this was not even thinkable. 30 years ago, in 1990s, when this climate negotiation started, we were not even recognized in the documents of UN climate negotiations or Kyoto Protocol. So these were a long time effort from our side, saying that we will deliver climate action, we will act on our own, but we will make sure national governments also consider this as part of their duty. That's the reason what we have achieved here is the result of building blocks every year, all these 10 years. We have made sure that in the 1990s, what was ignored for a long time has become an important recognition in the Paris Agreement. It was 2015. Since then, as you have heard, we have been working on so many processes, and it was now the multi-level action as recognized into the process, and it is part of the commitments. Therefore, we are saying that Emirates, through its outcomes, initiatives, but also the vision, has closed a new era. That was the spirit of the stocktake. We have now convened that we have lessons learned from the first phase of the Paris Agreement. We have even had this discussion at the local level, from the U.S. cities to Makati city. We had local consultations about how we advance the Paris Agreement, how we can accelerate this through collaboration. And now the task from the next 18 months is the time where we to go to our national governments, be it ministers of environment, be it ministers of climate, to ask them that they should then implement their duties that they agreed in the Paris in the Emirates Consensus. Paragraph 161, but also those countries who signed up to CHAMP. While we work with those national governments to bring more energy into their national climate plans, we also will go back to our hometowns. And as you have heard from Mayor McLean, as you have heard from Mayor Binay, we will gather our communities to say that a new era of climate action is starting. We will turn our town halls into mini COPs or small scale COPs with our local business, with our youth. We will take our actions that our climate commitments are more empowered, much more engaged by our communities. These commitments are connected to our national climate plans. And as you have heard from the case of the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, the national, federal, and global funds could also come to our investment so that the challenges or the opportunity that we see at the local level is embraced by additional resources that we can rapidly deploy these opportunities. So in the next couple of months, we will talk about this through our engagement in the UN process, but as well as in our town halls and in our daring cities communities. Maybe I give a break so that then we have the floor to debate about our participants. I'm very happy. So many of them have some their leaders. So many of them are willing to engage further. Therefore, daring cities community will be really a power that will make these discussions much more real at home and bring the results again back to the COPs. The floor is back to you, Alisa.
Thank you both, Danya and Eunice. Eunice, for the history about how exciting this last year has been and how it's been a work in progress over decades, and we're seeing things come to fruition. It's very exciting. And then Danya, from you on the role of the high-level champions, accomplishments that have happened, and what we're looking forward to for intervention from at the high-level champions level going into COP29. So thank you both for that. All right, next we're going to, before we shift to Johanna from our events team to share a little bit more about how this all connects to daring cities and what to expect going forward, we're going to launch a poll about how you think you can support engagement, building off of the outcomes of COP28. You can select any of the answers here. If you have other ways that your city or region is going to take further these outcomes of COP28, you can include those into the chat. We'd love to hear about anything unique, different, innovative that you're doing, or additional outcomes that you've seen that maybe weren't mentioned here today, although it was a very all-inclusive and comprehensive list. So we thank, again, our speakers for sharing all these insights with us here today. All right, we will end the poll here in just a second and take a look at the results. Yeah, so from the results we see, participation in CHAMP, really was a pivotal moment within the COP28 proceedings, and that was a major way for local and regional governments to kind of create this mandate to national governments around multi-level action and this new commitment to a new process of intervention as we update the NDCs in this upcoming year. So it's good to hear that was a good point of investment into the COP28 process. All right, next then I would like to invite Johanna from our global events team to help us connect Daring Cities 2024 to the outcomes of COP28 and to share how cities and regions can continue to get involved and make their voices heard this year. Johanna, go ahead.
Great. Thank you so much, Alyssa, for welcoming me here. And thank you to everybody who's joined us today. Really appreciate your participation. And also those who might tune in and watch the recording later. Thank you so much for joining us. So I have the pleasure today to talk to you a little bit about daring cities, what is to come this year, and exactly as Alyssa said in her introduction, how we can really leverage the voices of local and regional governments in concert with these major global processes. So in 2024, we're going to hear diverse global perspectives, including from urban leaders who have brought bold climate action to their cities, towns, and regions as a response to the climate crisis. And we've already started that process with our speakers today. Our current webinar is a part of Reflect, our first cornerstone, which serves as the foundation of Daring Cities. It really is a period of introspection and assessment of past climate actions and outcomes, particularly those of UNFCCC COP28, to ensure a seamless transition into our current year's initiatives. So the second part of Reflect, you can already mark your calendars. It's coming up on the 30th of April. We'll have another webinar where we're going to be looking forward on multi-level action and really connecting the dots between these key global moments. And I can see there my colleagues have shared the registration in the chat. So please already take the opportunity to register, share with your colleagues. But of course, if you're unable to join, we'll be sharing the recording. So you can always watch that as well. After Reflect, we transition into Exchange. And Exchange is our second cornerstone. Here we foster dialogue and share insights across local and regional governments, technical experts, and policymakers, emphasizing the importance of multi-level collaboration and dissemination of cutting-edge knowledge and effective climate action practices. Exchange will kick off with the Bonn Dialogues, taking place from the 3rd to the 5th in June, in person in Bonn. And here, invited Darien City's leaders and partners will gather together to discuss cross-cutting themes from projects to identify initiatives at the subnational level that can contribute to NDCs, that can contribute to national adaptation plans in support of advancing the CHAMP initiative, and ways in which multi-level action can be fostered toward the common goal of tackling the climate emergency. This will also have a portion which is broadcasted to the wider Darien Cities community. So we encourage you, of course, to tune in for that. And importantly, these will take place in parallel to the Bonn Talks in Bonn. And this gives participants the opportunity to create more partnerships and to discuss effective collaboration on multi-level climate emergency processes. In August to October, we'll continue with Exchange with our virtual forum. And here we're going to have a variety of online sessions across time zones that are open to everyone online. The sessions will focus on the theme of addressing the climate emergency through integrated and holistic solutions and explore interconnected factors like food and nature and how these topics can contribute to creating effective, good urban policy to address the climate emergency. And then finally, our last cornerstone is Advocate. And Advocate happens throughout Urban October into November in the lead up to CVD COP16 and UNFCCC COP29. And this is where Darien City's community representatives can share the key messages, the conversations, the outcomes that we had during Reflect and Exchange, and bring them to regional, national, and international events to raise our voices and make sure that Darien City's outcomes are heard, not only within these groups, but also outside of the bubble of ambitious local climate action. So with all of that in mind, we hope to see you at our next webinar. Again, it's 30th of April. Please register there. The link is in the chat. And if you want updates and you haven't already, you can subscribe to our newsletter where we'll share any program updates as well as outcomes. You can follow us on social media. LinkedIn and X are good places to find us. And you can also check our website. It's very easy to remember, dariencities.org, for key updates. And with that, I will pass it back to Alyssa.
Thanks, Shauna, for outlining the next steps and what we can expect going forward to COP29. Sounds like it's really going to be an exciting year for cities and regions in this global advocacy space. So thanks for sharing that. All right, we'd then like to open it up for some question and answer time. We have such a wealth of knowledge on this call today, so please use it to your advantage. We have about 10 minutes left here in today's webinar. Feel free to use the question and answer box to submit your questions, or if you would like to share some insights from maybe your own COP28 experience or how you've taken things back within your city or region. I think we also have some time and space to be able to do that too. But I think first we will turn things back over to the mayor. I think one interesting perspective that you shared was around how much of a community priority that sustainability and sustainable urban development is within Boise. What is kind of your perspective on why that has become such a priority within your city, and then how that shapes, how you approach your advocacy and interventions going into a COP?
Sure. Thanks for the question. And I'd say a couple of things on this. I mean, I was when I was on the city council, it became more and more clear to me that residents wanted our city to lead, whether it be because the university was doing surveys of residents and asking, or because the city was doing water planning and asking our residents, what you wanted us to do, what they wanted us to do in terms of planning for water supply into the future. And then, of course, our efforts to develop goals to ensure that we're powered by clean electricity and that we decarbonize by 2050. But a couple of proof points that I'm super proud of. I referred to one of them. 2 years ago, we put on the ballot a Clean Water and Climate Action Bond. It's a huge bond. In Idaho, you have to have 66%, so a super majority to pass this. And as a city, we can't borrow without passage of a bond at 66%. But nearly 82% of our residents said yes. And that is allowing us to act on the community engagement and water planning that we did by updating our existing, we call them water renewal facilities rather than sewer facilities, as well as create one that is solely focused on water recycling in an area that we've pinpointed for development, recognizing that publicly traded companies in particular have shareholders that expect them to mitigate climate impacts into the future to protect the value of their companies, and we'll partner with them. Another proof point is that we just passed a modern zoning code. Our zoning code hadn't been updated since the 60s. This creates a roadmap for more compact development as our city grows. We're going to grow closer together and grow up, both literally and figuratively. This allows us to create a development pattern that will support transit, walkable neighborhoods, safe access to parks and pathways. We had over 200 people testify in support of our modern zoning code, and it passed unanimously at the city council last June, and we just put it into effect. And then finally, we've got off the charts number of residences that participate in our composting and recycling programs. We're constantly being asked to offer even more opportunities for folks in Boise to do more and to do good. And also the community support, whether it be showing up at events, encouraging youth to participate, or demonstrating support of the initiatives that we're taking by sending in comments and asking how the residents can help us meet our goals. All to me demonstrates how Boiseans want to be active participants in shaping their future, both in this work as well as in others, but particularly in this work where we live, in the capital city of Idaho. It's so important and valuable to me personally to have the support of Boiseans in this work.
Thanks for that. Yeah, it's a very interesting perspective taking things at a local level, taking them to the global level, seeing those dots connect. And it's great to have leaders like you who are able to do that and bring those valuable perspectives. So we really appreciate your time and energy. Okay, taking a look at any other questions. If you have anything, please add them into the question and answer. We still have a few more minutes to get to them. I think, Tanya, from your perspective with the high-level champions moving into this year, you named so many accomplishments, so many initiatives, things, when it comes to prioritizing, if, you were giving advice to kind of a city or region as they look at all of these things that they could potentially be involved in, do you have any insights or advice or how things that are particularly new or innovative within this that could be maybe an entry point or a starting point for a city to kind of dig in and get involved within the high-level champion work?
Thanks so much, Alicia. So first off, both cities and regions are able to join the Race to Resilience and the Race to Zero through the respective process and become a member. And here they are able to report on their climate actions annually or biannually and showcase their leadership at the local level. So that's the most obvious point of entry. But of course, there are other ways of engaging through the different initiatives and calls to action that were launched at COP28 through partnerships and the relevant partner programs. And these are really key in terms of the sector focus. So whether it's the Urban Nature Program, for example, which showcases lighthouse cities, that is something that can be joined through the respective partners. But the Nature Positive for Cities call to action, for example, that is open to every city in the world, and also really great focus on nature-based solutions in urban areas. So it's quite specific depending on the initiative and at what level of government they need to engage. But I would say those are the first, the two main ways that jump to mind.
Thanks for that. Okay, another question we have is a little more, we went from kind of an implementation slant to a little more of a political question here. The question is from Sandra, and they asked, what do you expect in regards to the US elections, and how can local governments in a blue state like Idaho bridge that political divide, maybe become role models, fast track fossil fuel phase out and decarbonization, transition to renewable energy, green job creation through local initiatives like yours? Any insights would be appreciated.
Sure, I think that was directed at me. Idaho's a red state. Just want to clarify that we're a blue city and a red state. But this work transcends partisan politics. And so there were a lot of things that the questioner wanted to know how cities can take action. I direct them to the City of Boise's Climate Action Plan that details all of that work, from our water renewal work to urban ag to doubling our tree canopy and increasing our parks, open space, and pathways access for all residents. And so all that work is a part of that. And I'd say you talk about it in terms of how it affects our daily lives because it keeps us healthy and makes us more resilient, and you take the politics out of it.
Great lessons learned, but we know a lot of cities are in similar situations in the US, so it's good to have that insight for others to learn from, and that's really what Daring Cities is all about. So if insights like this are interesting to you, you want to learn more, we encourage your participation here, continuing into Daring Cities 2024 and leading up to COP29. All right, looks like those are the questions that we have for today. So I would firstly like to thank our Daring Cities 2024 partners with major contributions from the Federal City of Bonn, our co-host for Daring Cities 2024, the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, BMZ, and the Foundation for International Dialogue of the Savings Bank in Bonn. Also like to thank all of our speakers for your contributions today. Thank you to all our participants for joining us today from wherever you are in the world. This webinar has been recorded and will be made available online via our YouTube channel. As Johanna mentioned, we encourage your continued participation in Daring Cities 2024 by joining our next webinar on April 30th as we continue our march towards COP29 and the Bonn talks in June. We really look forward to continuing this work this year together. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out about anything you heard today or anything upcoming related to Daring Cities. You can reach us at daring.cities@ickley.org. For this today concludes our webinar, and please enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks so much.